Rated M for mature.
Atomfall is a survival action game set in 1960s England in a nuclear quarantine zone. The player wakes up within the quarantine zone and has to uncover the mystery of how they relate to it and how they can escape.
Who are you? What are you doing in here?
Atomfall was a huge gamble for Rebellion. It's a bit weird, it's very experimental, it's a huge stretch from the sort of game we normally make, and thankfully it seems to have worked. People have really engaged with the game in a way that we completely didn't anticipate. The community response to Atomfall has been absolutely amazing. We couldn't have anticipated people connecting with it in the way that they did. So many aspects of the game are us trying something because it seemed like the right fit for the game, but there was no guarantee that people would connect with it as a result. They really seem to have done so, and that's a huge relief. Very pleasing, very exciting for us. Very early in the production of what became Atomfall, many members of the team took day trips to the Lake District in the north of England to look at the location, to take reference, to do 3D scans of things like dry stone walls so that we had those assets to build the game with. What we really did over time is build a kind of theme park version of the Lake District. We took all of those interesting reference points and details and exaggerated them to turn it into something very, very memorable. We found that those trips were absolutely crucial to building the identity of Atomfall. There are so many things that you don't expect to notice. There's a certain immersion that comes from being in the place. If you're looking at photos and videos, that's already curated by someone else. They might not be looking to highlight the same things that you are. If you go into the location, talk to locals, just interact with the environment, things emerge that you don't expect.
Now, I'm not sure I should be saying out more to a stranger.
During those early trips, members of the team talked to people in the area that were experts on what had happened, including people that witnessed the original disaster that actually happened. There's still people alive who saw the original Windscale fire. They could give us bits and pieces of perspective and information and tone, personality that you wouldn't get any other way. So there's one real-world inspiration that players may not be familiar with. When walking in the Lake District, Jason Kingsley, one of the founders and owners of Rebellion, walked past a red phone box out in the middle of nowhere, because they are all over the place in the UK in very weird locations, and it started ringing. And he thought, why is that phone ringing? I'm out in the middle of nowhere. How would they know that's me? And then he thought, they won't know it's me because how would they know it's me? Didn't answer the phone, and we're glad he didn't because he might have been sent off on a weird quest. But that was one of the key inspirations that players might not even know.
Must die.
Atomfall is inspired by real-world events, but is an alternate history. We use that as a start point for all of our world building and exploration, and we cast quite a broad brush. You know, we looked very deep into British history. We looked at all of the events of the last 50 years in the UK, and there were different bits and pieces of inspiration that came across. So no one historical event was the trigger for all of our narrative threads in Atomfall. Obviously the Windscale fire is a key one, and the real events that caused that Windscale fire were a trigger for some of our plot. So I can confidently say that Atomfall is only Atomfall because it's set in Britain. The tone of gameplay, the kind of mystery, the kind of sci-fi storytelling that we adopted are all inspired by British events or British storytelling from the 60s. In every possible detail, we amplified that kind of retro British sci-fi speculative fiction. And for the world building itself, we used real world events and, things like cricket bats. So one of the interesting things about the history of the Windscale fire itself is that the Windscale plant was really built to generate plutonium for bombs. This was a secret project, and the nuclear plant being used for power was really a cover story. We found this was a really sort of juicy Cold War, and some of the identity of Bard and their secret projects emerged from that real world detail. So a very interesting process that we went through in the production of Atomfall was taking real world history and reference points and adjusting them so that they helped world build. We took the same strategy used by sci-fi writers and TV shows of the 60s in the UK, and that is to adjust the real events so that you could say something about the world that it had happened in. If you look back to TV shows like The Quatermass Experiment and The Prisoner, they use that similar strategy. The events themselves aren't immediately obvious direct parallels, but there's always a twist that lets you tell a new story without getting bogged down too much in specific details. So if I was to look back at moments that I'm particularly proud of in the production of Atomfall, it was the moments when players started to engage with the lead system and genuinely find it difficult to decide who to help, who to betray. There was a real kind of moral dimension to people's navigation through the game world. That was evidence that the whole system was working, and that players would develop their own story of what happened and what was the right thing to do. It's really interesting that that happened because that whole thing was a gamble. You don't know if it's going to work, and it really seems to have paid off. Another thing that I'm very proud of in Atomfall is I can pretty confidently say it's the first game with a last of the summer wine Easter egg. Halfway down a hill, there's a bath with 3 skeletons in it. They've clearly tried to ride the bath down the hill and they've crashed, and that's based in an old UK comedy show. I don't think there's any other game that will have a moment like that in it. It's great to see so many people engaging with Atomfall and enjoying it, even if it's not the sort of game that they might normally play, and really getting something from it.